Okay. Welcome everyone at home. Welcome everyone here. Thanks for coming this evening. So this evening I just had a couple of little sort of prompts or things for us to think about and talk about. One is about judgment, something that I was talking with someone about today, and it was just an interesting slant that I thought might be helpful. And then a little section from this book, Falling into Grace, Adyashanti's book, that explains, I think he does a pretty good job of explaining sort of like a beginning to end awakening, and then how do I live after I have this significant experience of knowing what's true and having this shift in relationship with mind. But let's go ahead and get grounded before we start. And just, all we're doing is just taking a moment to allow ourselves to fully arrive. Getting a sense of our spot in the chair, and then feeling that this is your spot on the earth. No one else can be in this spot that you're taking up, this space where you are. And noticing what it feels like to take up that space. And if you like, you could imagine yourself feeling rooted to the earth. You can help yourself feel that rootedness by becoming aware of gravity and how it gives your limbs and your body a sort of weight. Gravity's pulling you down. That's what makes it possible to feel the chair, to feel the ground beneath your feet. And you're just becoming aware of that in this moment. And then see if you can invite some curiosity about how much of you might actually be present here in the room right now. See what you notice about that. And see what happens if you just decide to give all those parts of you that might not be here a moment to arrive. You might notice all the things that the mind is still busy doing, maybe recounting the drive, or what kind of day you had today. And you just notice that your mind has those thoughts, and at the same time that you are here, not still driving, not still actively engaged in whatever you've been doing all day. You're just noticing that you're right here, whatever your mind may be doing. And kind of like a dog that goes and runs off as soon as you let him off the leash, you just wait. And notice that eventually the mind sort of settles down and is ready to begin whatever's here right now. And as you feel ready, give yourself an opportunity to look around the room and notice what's here. Connect with your surroundings. As a way of further connecting you or grounding you in the present. Notice what your eyes feel attracted to in the room, what they like to look at. Okay, so any feedback about how helpful is it to take that little bit of time? Anybody notice that that's helpful? And sometimes we don't realize that taking the time, just allowing yourself, without really intentionally doing anything at all, can create this state of feeling ready, feeling more grounded and present. And we can do this at any time. Anytime we're feeling ungrounded, we can say, oh, what happens if I just take a little break right now? What if I just notice my surroundings? Or notice what percent of me feels like it's actually here right now? And what happens if I wait a little? Does the number go up? So I was given a homework assignment a few weeks ago to invite curiosity about myself. And I noticed that, and you know, and the subtext in that assignment was, and don't judge the judger, because that's something that happens for all of us. And I noticed that the judging, I noticed the judging, and then I, want to judge the judging, and that is not really very helpful. And so I got some more information about this judging thing, and I wanted to present it for your consideration. So, what if judgment is a pattern of thought? So just the judging itself is a repetitive pattern that we engage in. So the more we do something, the easier it is to do again and again. And then the other component of the judging is that whatever those things are that it's judging, whatever the thoughts are or the behaviors or whatever it is that's being judged, the judgment keeps the other patterns locked in. It prevents them from moving. And I thought this was an interesting framing of this whole idea about judgment, because probably the reason that we judge is we think we're going to get better if we do that. If we're hard on ourselves, things are going to get better. Or there's some purpose in that. It's going to protect us or prevent something. But that the judgment it holds something in place that makes us feel better. But in fact, it keeps us stuck and keeps anything from changing. Because I don't think the internal critic thinks, oh, if I'm really hard on myself, then I'll keep being bad. I think the internal critic, that role that it keeps playing, that whoosh, is like, get better, darn it, do better. Wants us to do better. And related, I think as we try to be more mindful, try to be more aware, try to follow these more wise actions, or the less, avoid the less wise actions. And we're always having to respond to life, and that doesn't feel very good when we're just starting out trying to figure out how to respond in a new way. It's tricky because we want to know for sure what's the right way to respond, but that seems to keep the old pattern locked in. And so I just want to read this little section. It's called Life Demands a Response. And the subtext, or the context for this, is really just about the communication issues, and how when we say we know, we kind of foreclose all the options as soon as we lock it down and think we know. And that's all we usually want to do, is we want to know. We want to project ahead the next 5 steps and control, anticipate, know that everything is going to be okay. And so this section, called Life Demands a Response, he says, none of us ever knows what's going to happen from one moment to the next. We never know what's going to be demanded of us in any given moment. We really don't know anything other than this moment, right here, right now. But one thing we can be fairly certain of is that the next moment is going to be a little bit different than this moment. That life undulates and moves and is very unpredictable. Like an ocean, sometimes in life the waves are calm and easy, while at other times they're rough and challenging. Because the nature of life is uncertain and changing, not subject to our own needs for predictability and control, we can't imagine how we could actually live from this deep space of awareness. Our minds can't imagine living life in a way that is this open and groundless. What often happens is that we'll begin to touch this deeper ground of being, and then something happens, and we get pulled out of it. The kids are crying. You have to go to work. Someone calls you on the phone, and it's an emergency. You find that a friend or coworker is agitated, and you get lured into an argument. If we lose our awareness in these types of situations, if we become unconscious, then we get pulled from the ground of being. We tend to go right up into our minds, and we start to relate to the world from the standpoint of thinking. Life can be very challenging, and it therefore demands something from each of us. It demands a response. And he says, I want to introduce a phrase said by an old Zen master, which I really like. He called this space of not knowing, that we've called beginner's mind or strategic pausing, he calls it doing nothing. In this space, there's no doing happening, which means we're not leaping back into the mind and starting to do, creating beliefs, ideas, opinions. To clarify, he emphasized the word doing rather than the word nothing, to make a point that there is a way that this field of being can actually manifest as action, as doing. Doing nothing does not refer to just sitting in a cave all day or on the couch avoiding what is happening in our lives, but it is pointing to a very fresh and creative way of responding to our lives, to the spontaneous action that arises directly from the reality of not knowing. So instead of doing nothing signifying there's nothing going on, he's saying you're very intentionally doing something, but what you're doing is nothing. It's very active and alive. It's not nothing. So how do we begin to respond to life from this state of unknowing? How do we respond without going back into the matrix of the mind? How do we respond without being caught once again in old habits of action and reaction? That is a very deep question. How do we do the doing of nothing? How do we be as a verb, the depth of our being? Let's see, do you want to go any further? I'll go a little bit further. So this section is called Wise Action and a Natural Relationship with Thought, which is kind of what we're trying to achieve with all of this practice that we're doing. We're trying to achieve a relationship with thought that is more in line with how we're meant to function, how we're meant to be able to live. Most of our greatest challenges as human beings take place within the area of relationship. When I speak on this topic, I'm referring to all of relationship, to the entirety of relationship. The most primary relationship is the one that each of us has with this moment. What is the nature of the relationship that we, as this deep well of unknowing awareness, have with this moment? It is simply allowing this moment to be as it is. It is the space that allows whatever arises in this moment to be that which is. In fact, this is exactly why everything that happens simply happens as it does, because the depth of being allows it to do so. Not because our awareness chooses to allow it to happen, but because there is literally no other option. The reason for this is simple. This pure awareness that we are is not separate from anything that happens. Everything and anything we can possibly imagine, including all the images in the mind, all our thoughts, all our experiences, and all the various ways that humans can create suffering, arise from that deep well of unknowing awareness. In fact, everything is an expression of it. In other words, there's no separation between the ground of being and the myriad expressions arising out of it. From the perspective of the ground of being, its relationship with this moment is such that it can never change, alter, or manipulate that which is. Let's see.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
Mm-hmm.
What cannot manipulate what is?
From the perspective of the ground of being, its relationship with this moment is such that it can never change, alter, or manipulate that which is. I think I'm just going to go a little bit further. That will help, because that's a pretty darn deep paragraph. That would be great and wonderful if just accepting the moment as is without doing anything was the end of the story. But as everybody knows, it's not quite this simple. We also need to respond to each moment, to act. That's part of relationship too. We find ourselves having to respond to the environment, to the events and situations around us, and to other human beings. This is actually where the rubber really hits the road. This is where we can most clearly see how deep our experience of this ground truly is. How thoroughly have we returned to stillness? What we come to see is that there is nothing quite like our day-to-day relationships to show us where we really are, to show us firsthand our level of realization. So he goes on to talk about the relationship with thought, and I really like this section because he's talking about wise action. And when we have a realization of our true nature, that we're not the little me, we're not all the things that we think we are, the vulnerable, we're not just our body, we're not really our thoughts because we can witness our thoughts. We can't just be emotion because we can witness our emotions. There's something else there. It's unnameable, it's unknowable, we can't grasp it. It defies the ability to know it. We can't really wrap our heads around it. And at the same time, it is there. We know it's there. It's watching. It's looking out of your eyes at me, looking back out of my eyes at you. It's there. And the part that was, I know the part that's really complicated is when he says that there's no separation. So we, in order to do this looking, where we start to notice we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we're not the body, there seems to be a separateness there because we're kind of taking the pieces, parts, doing this process of elimination and saying, oh, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. And it seems logical then that we'd say, oh, these are separate things, these are separate parts. And then to go back and throw the curveball and say, but actually nothing is separate. Nothing is separate. So what he's talking about is the perceptual experience. When we go in and we look, we can tell, we know that we're looking, but we can't actually find the separation between the looker and the thing that it's looking at. When we do an investigation that's like an empirical investigation, looking for ourselves, not what books have told us, not what teachers have told us, not using scientific method or anything like that. When we go in on our own authority and investigate and notice, oh wow, I can't really find a me. And oh, I see that there's looking, I see that there's activity happening, there's a stream of experience. I'm either watching someone do something, or watching the tree, or watching my stream of thought, or watching the stream of emotion. But I can't actually find the line that divides those two things. And this might seem really esoteric, but it has a really important function, because when we just take things that we're told for granted and don't investigate them for ourselves, it puts us in this funny position of gathering lots of facts that might sound okay, and we're operating on some truth that someone else has told us, and we haven't verified any of it for ourselves. We're taking it on other people's authority, and we're not really making use of our own authority. If we discover on our own authority for ourselves that what we are is infinite, limitless, it can't even be contained. We can say this consciousness seems to be associated with this body, but we can't say for sure that it's only this size. I mean, there's no edge, it has no boundaries. We have no idea how big consciousness is. If we sit and we meditate and we lose that sense of, because our eyes are closed, and so we kind of get a fuzziness of our physical boundary, we feel huge. The space that we are feels gigantic. And yes, we can say the physical body that walks around is this size, right? But we can't say that about consciousness. We don't know for sure. There's nothing about it that we can say for sure, except we know it's there. We know it's there. I just read another article in Psychology Today where they're using people's, what do they call it, when they have a near-death experience, trying to pin it down and define it and prove or disprove why people can relate events that were in the room, happening in the room, when their brain was registered as dead through all the electronic technology that's there. Trying to find consciousness, right? We can't really define it. We can't really explain it. But if we investigate for ourselves, the more we investigate, the more that we can feel certain that there's something bigger than what we see. There's something bigger than what we've been taught. There's something that is ineffable and undescribable about what we really are. And when we start to believe that for ourselves, not relying on someone else's authority, and knowing that that thing, because it's not the body, it's not anything that I can show you, therefore it's untouchable, it can't be destroyed. No one can hurt that. There's a shift that occurs when you realize how great you really are. There's this thing that you are that transcends just being a human being. You are also a human being, but there's consciousness there too. And there's a great sense of relief often to know we're not just this. But consciousness needs a vehicle to experience life, right? It needs taste buds and a nose and ears and a brain to experience the wonder of creation, everything that's here. Consciousness can't experience life the way a human being experiences life. But humans have all these frailties, right, and vulnerabilities. And so if we think that's all we are, then we're always going to be afraid and feel frail and vulnerable.
I think I get lost in, I can, like, even in the realm of thinking about consciousness, like, I get lost. I can't touch it still, because even when I'm considering consciousness, I'm thinking about it and I'm analyzing it, and I'm still using my mind. Like, I don't know how to touch it without thinking about it. I don't know how to explain that.
So thinking is one of the ways that we experience stuff, right? The mind is always having some sort of opinion about whatever's going on, right? Trying to figure things out all the time. And the mind, it's a useful tool because it helps us get to this place where we're thinking about consciousness. And so, I mean, we couldn't actually have this investigation without the mind. And at the same time, the mind causes us all kinds of trouble, right? Gets in the way, interferes with lots of stuff. But we can use our amazing powers of logic and deduction to figure out what our actual experience is in this moment. We can figure out what's happening, what's not happening. Oh, I'm judging, oh, I'm thinking, oh, I'm... At the same time as you're engaged in the investigation, you also can see that your mind is engaged in an investigation. Right?
But then what? Like, if you see it and you know that you're thinking, then what? What do you do with that? Just notice it and...
So, just like judgment is a pattern, the doing is a pattern, and the mind thinking that it has to be doing something, that, you know, every conclusion, every piece of information we have, we need to do something with that. That's another pattern of thinking, right? Belief in utility or usefulness, or, you know, that everything has to have a purpose or a... Right? And the mind thinks it knows what the purpose of everything is. It has to know in advance, judge in advance what's useful, what's not. How often do we do that in relationship? Make a judgment about, oh, this is a waste of time, or this is not. So, I've had that experience. Have you guys had that experience? Like, you're in an interaction, or you're in a meeting, or you're somewhere, and the mind is trying to figure out in advance whether or not there's anything here for me, whether this is useful or not, right? And it thinks it knows. It thinks it can make a snap judgment and decide yes or no. And then what happens as soon as we decide we know, then close. And something might have been there for us, but probably won't be available. We won't be available.
Just wish there was like a switch you could flip for like one day to have no mind thinking, just to just I don't know. It's so automatic, even after all of the stuff that I've learned about, and it's just so automatic that I don't even realize it. Still, I don't realize it. That I've gone days without being present.
Yeah. And if you read the books and listen to like all the Adyashanti has so many satsangs and talks. You listen, people ask questions. He talks a little while, people ask questions. And so many times the question is, how do I stay there? I had this realization and I can't stay there. And what do? I want to get that back. I want to stay there. Right? He calls it the got it and lost it syndrome. So, what if losing it is an illusion? What if that's another assumption that the mind makes? So it's still there, it's always there, we just lose touch with it. We just lose contact. And why do we lose contact with it? Do you remember what it said in the reading? Exactly what you were saying just a second ago. Because we get busy, we get pulled into an argument, or there's an emergency, or somebody wants something, and we go whoop, right back up in the mind. Right? That's the habit. Whoop, right back up in the mind. Because when there's a problem, who's there to solve it? The mind. I can do it.
It's right? So good at convincing. I think that's why I get, well, at least for me, get pulled up, because that's not safe. Come back to me. Like, I know what's up. That's not safe. Come, me meaning the mind. Like,
Right. And so we work at shifting our relationship with those thoughts. If there's even the slightest doubt whatsoever that mind is telling us the truth 100% of the time, telling us all there is to know about life and about reality, if we've even just got the tiniest bit of doubt, then we're on our way. That's all we need. That's all we need, is if there's a hint of doubt there, that when no matter how certain I think I am of what's right, or that I'm right, or what's the right way to go here, as long as there's a little bit of doubt, even if I do the same thing I've always done, if there's a little bit of doubt there, that I'm actually operating from my true self, that I'm actually certain and correct about what's true, then there's always going to be an opportunity the next time for a shift to occur. There's always the possibility. And I don't think it's uncommon at all for someone to say, oh, I was really awake for half a day, or for that whole meditation, or whatever length of time, and then something, especially when something comes up, usually relationship kinds of things, back up into head, we're gone. We're sleepwalking again. Right? And what do we say to ourselves about the sleepwalking? Do we say, oh, that's terrible?
Yeah. Frustration.
Yeah.
Why can't you just get this?
Right. And the judgment keeps the pattern locked in place. If we look at it, and I'm pretty certain that that's true, when I look at it for myself, when I judge my patterns, it's very difficult for anything different to occur. There's no space, right? Because when we judge, implicit in the judging is, I know what's right, I know what's wrong. So sometimes a self-compassion practice is the easiest way in to start to shift the judgment. What if we say something different to ourselves about the knowing? Instead of knowing that we're bad or what we're doing is bad or wrong or hating what we're doing, wishing it could be different, what if we framed that to ourselves differently? Like, oh, there goes that human being part again. Or, oh, there's that pattern, and we can give them cute little names. There's the bratty teenager, or the cranky mom, or whatever name we want to give to the patterns that we notice, so we can be playful, so we can be curious about that. Because probably what's getting in the way, probably what's responsible for the judgment in the first place is fear, right? When I investigate with folks their harsh inner critic, when there's a really harsh critical voice, the goal of that critic is usually to save or protect or keep somebody safe. Some kind of protection. So it's about fear. So we're afraid of being whatever bad thing we say or we fear being. Maybe we project it down the road. The worst case, extreme case. Oh my gosh, it's a slippery slope. If I let this go, if I say I'm okay, even though I did this thing, who knows what I'll do tomorrow? Right? Mm-hmm. But it actually works in reverse. If we want change, we can't beat ourselves up that harshly for our mistakes, over the things that we don't like. That fear creates a cycle of judging and criticism that keeps all those behaviors locked in place, because fundamentally as human beings, we are not motivated by that kind of harshness and that kind of criticism. You can always, if you know any kids anywhere, you can do a pretty easy experiment, simple experiment, and see what happens. Any activity, doesn't matter what it is. See what happens when you correct and criticize what they're doing, and see what happens if you shift over and you start pointing out all the good things that they're doing. You can even conduct that experiment in your own head. What happens? What do I notice internally? What's the feeling state when I point out to myself all the things that I did right today? What's my feeling state if I frame my mistakes as human, not catastrophic, and that I'm constantly trying to do better? I did the best I could. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Probably not catastrophic. Nobody died. And I'm always looking to do better. Versus, that was horrible, terrible, very bad. Don't do that again. Ever, 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 ever. I mean, when you feel into the tone, you can feel your body start to shut down and close up, like tense up, when you frame it as, don't ever do that again. Versus, oh, made a mistake. There I go, being human again. Some sort of lightness, some sort of truth about our mistake. The critic wants to frame it as terribly and harshly as possible because it thinks, and this is just a pattern. The pattern is it thinks if I do that, it'll never happen again. But if you keep doing that and the pattern keeps being the same, you kind of got some evidence that it doesn't work, right? If the pattern doesn't change, then the critic is a liar.
Maybe if I don't know, the pattern was started so long ago, it is a lot. I mean, maybe it's not even fair to follow that pattern because you don't really know that's true. You think it's true because that's been the pattern your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really fair to believe that pattern if you've never tested it the other way. I have no idea if I'm making any sense.
It makes perfect sense. It's pretty not fair to ourselves to believe in stuff that we haven't questioned, right? Especially if it's making us miserable.
Like you react this way because you need somewhere along the line or someone told you or made you believe that that's what you need, but maybe you don't really need that.
And how would you know?
Until
If you don't question it, yeah. So I love this idea of always testing it out for yourself, being your own authority, not taking anything I say or anybody else says to you as the truth. You take what interests you and you go out there and you test it out for yourself. So what happens? What would actually happen if I noticed the critic and I talked back to it and said, well, it wasn't that bad. I could actually come back from that, and I didn't mean to hurt anybody. And I'm always trying to do better. That's not what I want to be doing, but I can do better. Rather than horrible, terrible, evil, bad. Right? So even though this idea of separate or not separate is kind of confusing, and that's probably a discussion for another day, at a minimum, when we don't allow for the not knowing, when we don't allow a space for the not knowing, and the critic doesn't want to do that. It's trying to secure an outcome. It's trying to secure a predictable, safe outcome. And its ways of going about that are flawed because it can't actually know. It can only know what's here right now. No one can predict the future. If anybody could, they'd have a lot of money right now. People try, right? Right? Predict the stock market, go to fortune tellers, read my cards, right? All that stuff that people do trying to get some sense of control. But we just don't really know. We know there's free will. And we know that people do respond, if we test it out, people respond to not being judged or to being seen and heard. Others respond to that. And that's the space where change happens. That's the space where connection happens. That's the space where real communication is possible. So, we'll stop there. Anybody want to add anything or ask anything?
This is just like all brand new for me.
Okay.
I just see things more and more in my work.
Uh-huh.
The way I,
used to react to clients, it's just completely different. Trying to understand their perspective and being open to their experience, and then that helps me help them better. So
Yeah.
they're teaching me as well as I'm teaching them.
Yeah.
And like you say, you can't predict or presume that a certain client's going to then act and react the same way. And it's been a great learning experience to just be more positive, be more of a coach, and trying to encourage rather than always point out things they might not be doing, because then I take that on to myself, because if I'm training them, then it's probably something I need to do better.
Yeah. In my own work, I find that it's been incredibly helpful both for me and my clients. If I don't think that I have to fix people, then I can allow them to have the space to make their own decisions and have their own opinions. And I'm really, in that way, working with them toward what they want and need. Instead of me thinking, oh, I know how to work with anxiety, or I know how to work with depression, or I know how to do this or that. And the client can sense when you have shut down, when you're not really there anymore. So instead now, starting to get over my own fear because clients are responding, and it's a two-way process. It's not, I don't get to go ahead and be comfortable before I ever interact and test this out and find out that it's true. The more I do it, and the more I risk being there totally in the moment, not assuming anything, not projecting anything, not trying to seem like I know anything, but really being completely present in there with my clients. The things that happen are amazing. They respond in amazing ways because I'm not laying any trips on them. They don't feel like I'm expecting them to hurry up and do anything or get well or be anything. They feel like it's totally okay to just be themselves, and we're just engaged in this process together, and I don't have to feel any guilt or shame about what's happening or not happening. And there's this flip now where I'm always looking for the good. I'm always looking for, oh, there's a resource, and oh, that's a good thing, and oh, this is a helpful thing, so that I can help ground my clients in all these positive things and resources that they have at their disposal that they might not be aware of. It's been a really amazing, I really resonate with what you're saying, and especially at work. It's a really cool thing to watch when we really allow other people to have the space and don't assume that we know them or know what they're thinking or feeling, or right? And I mean, I think therapists probably do it all the time, assume they know what's going on based on how somebody presents. And when I first started asking, I was pretty surprised. I could say, well, here's what it looks like, but what's really going on for you right now? And find out how much of the time I was off. So now it's like, oh no, I can reflect back, here's what I'm seeing, but that's not the truth. That's not what I rely on for finding out how somebody's doing. I have to really check in and find out what things are like for them in that moment. And then they feel heard.
What's interesting is that is true. Like, you do feel so much more comfortable and real, and you can get more. But then there's this other part, I think, that everyone wants an expert. Everyone wants an answer, so they're all in search of an expert, but they never get to where you're talking about until you realize that we're all just kind of figuring it out. Like, you might know a little bit more about this piece, and I might know a little bit about this piece. When I was gone for a while, somebody had explained it like that. Like, they were a therapist. She was like, I don't have all the answers, and I don't know everything about everything. It was just this whole balancing act that I saw in my head. Like, we're all figuring it out, and you might know a little bit more about it, but we can help each other because I might not know a little bit more about that. But nobody has the answer yet. I feel like we're all looking for the answer. I don't know. But in the end, you're right. That's what works, is when you don't act like you have all the answers.
Yeah. It's normal to want easy solutions, right? Wanting a silver bullet, magic bullet, right? It's just how we are as humans.
It's comforting also when you realize that nobody does have it, so it's not just you that's missing out. Like, nobody really gets it. Like, we're all just muddling around here, like, just swimming through and trying our best to get through it.
Right. Everyone's just swimming through life, trying to do their best. And that's okay. That's okay. That is what we're doing. So I appreciate that this might be overwhelming or a lot of information, and just don't worry. The parts that don't make sense, don't worry about, and the parts that resonate with you, make use of those, because I think that everyone's put together differently in their understanding and their readiness for certain ideas or concepts. It's all unique and individual. And so we just take the pieces that we're attracted to or that we need right now and go with those. Okay. So we'll just take a little break and have a guided meditation. Okay.
Stand up. It was cold. Then I got warm. I think the air was on.
I was
I felt
I never trust myself because I'm always cold, so I never know if it's actually cold. It's a lot smaller than the last time I was here.
I missed last week. But yeah, this is the first time I've ever been here where there's really been just
Yeah, it's been a long time since we had a gathering this
I
small.
was surprised when I walked in.
What do you think of the new chairs?
I like these ones that I'm in, yeah.
Yeah,
I like it. It's
Cool.
comfy.
yeah.
Do you know Maston Kip from the Daily Love, and it's been on Oprah a few times?
Mhm.
He's coming to Columbus tomorrow for a book launch. He's like going to all these cities
Uh-huh.
doing his book launch or whatever. I thought maybe you knew about him. He's been on like Super Soul Sunday.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he's like a younger guy, but just kind of all these same beliefs and whatever.
Right.
Anyway, I've been following him for a long time actually, and then when
Uh-huh.
I like realized that he like was related to like all of this kind of stuff, I was like, oh, I've been reading his stuff every day when I get it emailed to me. And anyway, he's coming tomorrow, and Lauren and I got tickets to go see him
Oh,
talk,
okay.
so we're really excited
Cool.
about it.
Yeah.
Excited.
Yeah, it seems like there are a lot of teachers out there now, and so lots of different pointers, lots of different flavors, and I can't really keep track
All of
of all of them anymore. And one of the wonderful things for me personally about having had the shifts that I've had is that seeking energy it just finally stopped. It just went quiet. So I still have all my books and things, but I'm not constantly looking for another non-dual book. I'm not constantly,
In search of
yeah,
something.
yeah. So the reading and the books and the inspirational materials have a way different purpose for me now. It's more like keeping me in touch with what I already know.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Mhm.
I'm just like you, just like everyone else. I'm wanting to try to be more aware all the time. You know, things still grab me and pull me away from consciousness or awareness, and my goal is to be able to be conscious all the time, as much of the time as possible. So,
One really quick question, and if it's a long answer, you don't have to answer it, but when you talk about acting or just choosing your direction from like your true self,
mhm.
is it possible to go along life thinking that or even just one thing, if you think you've made a decision or chosen a direction from your true self, can that be influenced by things that really aren't your true self? Like oh yeah, my gut said blah, 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 but really your gut is influenced by your past and your history and this and that. Like, I'm always thinking, like, is that my true self or is that not? Like, or
Yeah.
am I doing that because of this, and that? Like, I don't know.
Mm.
I guess I'm still looking for confirmation. Like, yes, that's the right way to go. Like,
Yeah, so that is really. Oh, do you guys want blankets?
Well, that's why I bring this. So I'm perfectly fine.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I can't get my back comfortable.
Oh, well,
I might have to move
try
this.
some of these other chairs. Yeah, yeah. That brown one is supposed to be the most ergonomically correct.
I sat in it the first time.
Okay. No.
I didn't like that one either.
It didn't seem
How about
like it.
these? That's a very, very common question. People want to know, okay, so how do I get to this place where I can always choose the right thing 100% of the time? And that's really, can you feel that the place where that question comes from? Can you feel it?
Mm-hmm.
It's that striving place. It's the same place as ego always makes decisions from, right? Fear of, what if I don't choose the right thing? What if I make a mistake? Right? But we know that there's really no such thing. Right? It's all learning. Everything we're doing is just about becoming more aligned with our true nature, discovering our true nature, and then living in alignment with that truest part of ourself. So all the goals, all the other things, the earthly goals, they're nice, but they're not the goal. And if we always remember that what we are is spirit that came here manifested as Beth and Cheryl and Teresa, right? To play, to dance here on earth. That can help us maintain a lightness about whatever's happening. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You guys want to leave the lights on?
I like them off.
Is this one in your eyes? Okay. All right. So I can shorten the time if anyone needs to get out of here sooner because we talked a while.
I'm okay either way.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just do our regular meditation. And get comfy wherever you are and start to feel a sense of your spot. And turn your attention to the top of your head, just noticing what you find there. It might be nothing at all. It might be tingling, or coolness, or warmth. Keeping in mind that your only job is to notice. Whatever's occurring in this moment, you're just noticing. You could notice things that you feel in the top of your head, and also thoughts, or other things might be occurring while you're noticing that. And you're just noticing that too. And then let your attention drift down and begin to notice your face. Noticing the areas around the eyes or the mouth where we sometimes carry tension. See if you could unclench your jaw or let your tongue rest comfortably in the bottom of your mouth as a way of releasing some of that tension. And then just notice whatever remains. And then let your attention drift around to notice the sides of your head. And whatever you find there, seeing if you can remain curious. Seeing what the experience of that part of your head is like in this moment. And perhaps allowing your ears to drop slightly, or even just imagine that your ears are dropping slightly as a way of releasing the tension in the sides of the head. And notice what that feels like. And then let your attention move around to notice the back of your head. And include the back of your neck. Taking note of whatever you find there. Perhaps there's some tension or sensation or nothing at all. And you're just noticing. And then whatever you found there in the back of your head, in the back of your neck, you just leave right there where you found it. As you move your attention down across your shoulders, slowly scanning over the shoulder joint, continuing down your arms and pausing at each joint, pausing at the elbows, and then scanning down your forearms and noticing your wrists, hands, right to your fingertips. Just noticing whatever you find there in your shoulders and in your arms right now. Inviting curiosity. And then gently pull your attention away from your arms, leaving whatever you found there in your arms right there where it is. And begin to notice the core of your body, starting with your throat and scanning down the front of your body, noticing your chest, belly, all the way down to your hips, feeling yourself anchored in your chair. Noticing what the core of your body feels like. You might notice tension there, or some sort of holding, or feelings in the stomach or in the chest. And just see if you can stay with the noticing, not drawing any conclusions or judging, just noticing. You might see if you could allow your throat to loosen or soften, and imagine an opening in the heart area. See if you can allow your belly to soften. And you're just noticing whatever's there, whatever remaining sensations or tension or anything that's there in the core of your body. Allow it to be there. And gently shift your attention to begin to notice your legs, starting with where you're sitting in the chair. Noticing the feeling of the chair as you scan down across your thighs. Pausing at your knees to notice what's there. And letting gravity pull your attention even further down your shins, down your calves, pausing to notice your ankles, and then scanning from your heels all the way to the tips of your toes, slowly noticing all the parts of your feet. And you're just noticing, just getting a sense of what your legs feel like in this moment. And you might notice achiness or tiredness or coolness or warmth. Let's see if you can just notice. See if you can have a true experience of the felt sense without judging or labeling. You might ask, what's that really like right now? And then when you feel like you've got a sense of what your legs are like right now, gently pull your attention upward until it meets your breath at a place where you notice breathing happening. And begin to become aware of the fact that you're breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. And you're just noticing that it's happening. You don't have to do anything. Breathing happens naturally. And see if you can tell where your attention is drawn to notice your breath. Is it the belly or the chest? Or is it at the nose? You're just noticing what attention seems to be drawn to about the breath. Not trying to change the breath. If some part of your breathing feels uncomfortable or strained, you could even notice that. Just noticing it, not trying to change it. And as you feel ready, see if you could start to allow awareness of other things happening in the moment. Just see what you notice. What's here in addition to breathing? Just noticing where attention goes in the moment. Sounds, sensations. You might feel your clothes or the temperature. You might even notice things like thought happening. Or you might notice restlessness or boredom or sleepiness. And see if you could be curious about those things if they're happening. Your only job is to notice. What's right here? What's happening right now? The mind seems extra busy, you can notice that too. And then you just come back to noticing what's here in the present moment. Not trying to control anything, just noticing where attention goes naturally. And if you like, you can introduce this experimental question into your space. What happens if I allow everything to be as it is in this moment? What's the experience of that? What would it be like if I were to allow everything to be as it is? You might also ask, what if I were not in opposition to anything in this moment? Not fighting anything, not struggling against anything. And so in this short space of time, you could just experiment and see what happens if I just don't struggle right now. What would happen if I allowed everything to be right now? What if I even let go of the meditator? The one who's trying to get it right. Let go of ideas about what meditation is supposed to be like. And again, you're just noticing what happens when you ask this question. What happens if I allow everything to be as it is? And if you need to stay grounded, you can notice occasionally your contact with the chair or with the ground, your feet. And you're simply allowing attention to go wherever it is interested in going in the moment, without trying to control anything. Just noticing. And just take one last minute as we reach the end of this meditation to savor the space, the feeling of spaciousness, the quiet. noticing what it's like to contemplate allowing everything to be as it is. Noticing this space of doing nothing. Perhaps making a mental note to yourself that you didn't really have to do anything to achieve this state. You just ask the question, what happens if I allow everything to be as it is? And as you feel ready, you can start to send some energy into your arms and legs. And some movement in your fingers and toes. Taking all the time you need to transition from your meditation space Thank you all for coming this evening. So nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.